Hey, everybody. I'm Clif G. I'm a grateful alcoholic. I'm sober since August the 15th of 2001. And for that short amount of time, I'm as grateful as I know how to be. And it's good to be back in California tonight. I thank Joe Ben for inviting me. This is the third time, actually, I've been to the speaker meeting. I'm a recycled person. Early on, Carl had Lori and I on a joint share out there early on last year. And then he had me back kind of towards the end of last year. It's good to be back again. Good to see that the sick folks are still here. That's good. So Joe Ben and Carl and I got to be together back in May in Dallas, and the good news is Dallas is still standing. That's some good news. The really good news is the three of us are gone from Dallas, so we're on our separate ways. But a lot of people on here I know and love. It's good to see Stephen on here and some folks from Tulsa and around the country who I know and think a lot of. Good to see the sober houses all still full and rocking and rolling. So you're the folks. I don't know who in there needs to hear this talk tonight. So listen up. One of you, I'm sure. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, they were talking about restless, irritable, and discontentedness. And Bill Wilson wrote in the essay on step 5, he wrote about anxious apartness. And when I read about that and heard about restless, irritable, and discontentedness in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, that all resonated with me. And it resonated to my core because that was, for the first time, people put into words how I had felt my entire life. That I never can relax. I'm always needing to be doing something somewhere with somebody. I'm always on the edge. I'm just about 2 seconds from being pissed off at everybody. And then I'm just really discontent. I'm unhappy. I'm unsatisfied. I'm dissatisfied, particularly with my current circumstances. I mean, I could be with the 304 house and be with all those guys, and 202 would call and say, get over here. And I think, well, I don't want to miss out on that. And I got to be there. And, if I'm in one place, over there looks better. I'm just not happy wherever I am. And I'm looking around at my circumstances. I can remember from the time I was a little kid, looking around at my life and looking around with people I was in class with. I remember going to kindergarten. My mama had me spit shined early at that little red schoolhouse in West Texas. And she marched me up that lane and sidewalk and got me in that schoolhouse. There was probably 10 or 15 kids in there at those little bitty low desks. And man, I walked in the door and those kids' heads popped up and looked at me. And immediately the thought was, man, I don't know what book these people are reading out of, but I know they got all the answers and I don't. And my mom had me there early and I felt late. And I've been that way my whole life. I mean, I've just had that idea that I'm one puzzle piece short. I'm 100-piece puzzle and I only got 99. I'm just a step out of the circle. And when I was 11 years old, I held off just as absolutely long as I could. When I was 11 years old, under a big old weeping willow tree down in southeast Oklahoma, my brother on a hot summer day opened up a can of Country Club malt liquor. By the way, has anybody in here ever drank Country Club malt liquor beer? If you haven't, that's God working in your life. Carl and Ben, of course they drank. Of course they did. But if you haven't, that's God working in your life. I'm just telling you. So I took a big drink of that, and he and I drank that beer under that big weeping willow tree, and the magic of alcohol happened to a guy like me. And all that I just described to you prior to that drink seemed to just go away. In the moment, at that time, right there with my brother, everything seemed to be okay. As a matter of fact, it seemed to be a little better than okay. And I wasn't one of those guys that I drank all that beer with my brother, puke, black out, and into my social drinking. That's not my experience. But I can tell you this, by the time I got to high school, I'm a daily drinker. The legal drinking age in Oklahoma when I was in high school was 18 for young ladies and 21 for guys. but there was a little Zippy Mart in the little town I grew up in. And if you could get there at 6:30 in the morning, the legal drinking age was big enough to get your money on the counter. And my buddy and I, my senior year, we had a 0-hour class. I can't remember if it met at 7 or 7:30, but regardless, we would get together 6 to 6:30 on every school day morning. We would pool all of our money that we could scrape up, and we would buy every day an 8-pack of Pony Miller beer, the champagne of bottled beer. We'd buy an 8-pack, and we would split that right down the middle. I'd have 6 and he'd have 2. And I would just get this cool buzz on, and I could go to school and kind of maneuver around those people and seem to be okay. I'm a blackout drinker. By the time I get to college, I'm full-blown alcoholic. I've been full-blown alcoholic. If there's any kind of magic line I crossed it many, many years ago. I like what my buddy Paul says. You know, he probably thinks he crossed it right outside his mother's womb. Just boom, he's alcoholic. I can identify with that, man. It just seems I've been that way my whole life. You know, whatever there is, if one's good, 5 or 6 would be even better, you know. And by the time I get in the workforce, of course, I'm well at it. And I had some friends when I was in college, they drank with me and they looked a lot like me. We would come home for Christmas holidays and we would start drinking. We'd always make sure we were home for Christmas. And then after Christmas, we were just gone till New Year's. I mean, we would just be on a week-long tear. And we would come struggling in on New Year's afternoon. And those people, those men and women, they drank with me all the way. And then the strangest thing happened to them. They met him, they met her. They got these great jobs. They just quit, you know, and their life got better. They started getting promotions at work. They started having kids. They started, they started buying bigger houses. They had those things called 401ks or whatever, and their life just seemed to get better. And they just stopped. And of course, I'm looking at them thinking, you're just quitters. You know, you're just a bunch of quitters. But my life, my drinking life, by the time I'm out of, I'm a lawyer by trade. And by the time I got out of law school, my drinking looked something like this. Somebody would say to me, hey, listen, we're going to go down and have cocktails after work. Do you want to go? Now, cocktails sound just so sophisticated, don't they? I mean, I'm from the country. I mean, I grew up, I've still got hayseed in when I had hair and a bus ticket in my pocket. And so cocktails sounded really attractive to me. It sounded sophisticated when they used to say that to me when I was younger, when I was a young lawyer. And I would say, absolutely. And I would ask them, what time are we going? And they would say 5:30. And I would always give them the same response. I'll get the table. Because this is what I know. If Carl said to us, listen, we're all going out drinking tonight at 9:00, we'd say, we're in. But I don't wait till 9:00 to start drinking. I have to drink to get ready to go drink. I mean, you just don't go at 9. So I would go down at 4:30 and get the table to drink, to get ready to drink with them at 5:30. And so they would come down and I would have the table. And then this is kind of how it would look. The waitress would come and she would look at the first person. They would order. And about 15 minutes or so later, they come back. And this is how the conversation goes. They look at the first person, said, would you like another? This guy's got maybe 3/4 of his drink gone. And he looks at her and says, no, I don't want any more. My wife is cooking dinner. I've got to be home in like 45 minutes. Now, this guy with 1/4 of a drink left on the table pays his tab, gets up, gets in his car, presumably goes home to his wife, has dinner with her, may not have another drink tonight, tomorrow night, next week, next month, next year, may never drink again. I don't know. They look at the second person. She's got about half of the glass left for her. Says, would you like another? She says, no, my daughter has a soccer game in 30 minutes. I need to tab out. With a half a drink on the table, she pays her tab, gets up, gets in her car, gets to the soccer game early, finds her daughter, gives her a hug, tells her she loves her, goes, sits in the stands with the other parents, cheers for her daughter's soccer team. This is important, Carl, does not get thrown out of the game, right? Doesn't get thrown out. Afterwards, Not that Carl would get thrown out of Maddie's soccer game, but you get the point. So afterwards goes out and gets pizza with the other parents, and she may have a beer, may not drink again tonight, next week, next month, next year, may never drink again. Then there's the third person. Now, this is the person I know all of you here on this screen has encountered. This person has about a quarter of their drink gone. Or maybe it's the worst case scenario. The ice is melting and the booze is overflowing. Now, in this group, that's alcohol abuse. We get that, right? And the waitress looks at her and says, would you like another? And she says the strangest thing of all of them. No, I don't care for anymore. I'm beginning to feel it. Now, listen, when I hear that, what I start thinking is, okay, now we start ordering tequila shooters, because if you're feeling it, there's a window we got to get into. I mean, there's a rocket ship that's just about to blast off. And so you got to get in there. But what I know today is what that lady's saying is that the effect of alcohol on her is significantly different than the effect of alcohol on me. What she's saying is she doesn't want anymore. She's beginning to feel out of control or impaired, and she doesn't want anymore. See, that's not the effect that alcohol has on me. The effect that alcohol has on me is I begin to feel empowered. And when I start drinking, all bets are off. 3 things that are guaranteed when I start drinking. I don't stop unless I black out, pass out, or run out. Unless one of those 3 conditions are met, we're drinking and finishing the job. There's one more thing that's also important about my drinking that I know about it is there's always a crash site. I don't know when it's going to be, where it's going to be, or who's going to be involved in that, but there's always a crash site. And if it were just that, if it was just that piece of the puzzle, if it was just that piece that when I start drinking, this allergic reaction happens in me. If somebody could have said to me, hey, you're allergic, if you drink, you get thirsty. So don't drink. Right? I could connect the dots because we know people that are allergic to stuff. I bet you there's people on this screen that know people that are allergic to things like shellfish, bee stings, peanuts. The peanut people, my God, let's talk about those folks for just a second. I mean, the peanut people, they eat one nut. They make one emergency room visit. Now follow me here, one emergency room visit. And they go to a restaurant after that. They want to know, has a peanut been on the city block? I mean, it's not enough to know, has it been in the restaurant? They need to know, has it been on a city block anywhere? I mean, they are vigilant about this. One emergency room visit. Let me tell you about me and drinking. I'll give away houses, cars, children, families, wives, jobs, careers. I'll never catch a clue. It's the booze. I'll never connect the dots. It's the drinking. But if it was just that, if it was just that I'm allergic, if that's all it was, but it's the other piece of the puzzle. It's the other piece of the puzzle that makes people like my sweet wife, Lori, it drives her absolutely up the wall. It's the piece of the puzzle that I can't sufficiently answer. And that's the piece of the puzzle that runs around in my head. It's that obsession of the mind. It's that restless, irritable discontent that sets off, once again, the obsession that drives me back to that experience that I had when I was 11 years old, that either consciously or unconsciously, I recall that when that happens, I get the sense of ease and comfort. And it looks something like this. I come home. And my wife says to me, and by the way, it doesn't matter which one, I've had 4. If you need a program to keep up, I'll issue one of those later. But it doesn't matter which wife it was, they would look at me and say something like this. Hey, I'm cooking dinner. It's going to be ready in an hour. We need a loaf of bread. Can you go get one? And I would say, you bet. And so I run off down to the Homeland store and I go in and get a loaf of bread. I come out. I run into my friend Joe Ben. He looks at me and says, what are you doing? And I say, hey, they sent me for bread and I got it, and dinner's going to be ready in 50 minutes. I got to get home for that. And Joe Ben looks at me and he says, 50 minutes. Well, hey, we can go over to the Log Inn, have a couple of beers. You can be home in 50 minutes. Now, when I get information like that, I filter that through the keen alcoholic mind, which I know everybody on these screens are familiar with, because only in Alcoholics Anonymous do we talk about the keen alcoholic mind. Let me assure you that over in the Al-Anon rooms, they're not talking about the keen alcoholic mind over there at all. But I filter that through the keen alcoholic mind. And I think 50 minutes, 2 beers, I can do that. And so Joe Ben and I on a Thursday night, we go to log in with the full intention of having 2 beers. Now, Sunday when I get home, everybody's mad at me. I mean, she's mad, the kids are mad, the dog's mad, the cat's mad, and I don't know why I've got the brand. Got it. And they're all pissed off at me. And I don't know about you if you've ever been in a jackpot like that, but when I get into one of those, I need to get everybody together because I need to tell them the story. Because as alcoholics, you all know we can't go to the bathroom without there being a story. I mean, we go pee and come back and say, I got to tell you what happened, man. We got stories about everything, which reminds me, Debbie, thank you so much for you and Joe doing all you've done over the last 2 years almost now for recording our history and our stories. We're so grateful for you guys for doing that and showing up here and all over the country, recording all this stuff for us. So I wanted to be sure and say thank you. And that reminded me about the story. So I start to tell them the story and I talk about the bread. And what happens is I get to the part about Joe Ben. And when I get about the part about Joe Ben, suddenly my mind begins to just do something crazy and out of my mouth comes, and so see, this is Joe Ben's fault. When I begin to tell him about running into him. And the craziest part about that is I believe that. I believe it's Joe Ben's fault. And I get to the end of the little allegory, and by the time I get to the end of it, I look at the people that I love the most. And maybe you've experienced this too. Sat across from the people that I love the most. Wives, children, my mom, my dad, grandparents. You know, people that I love so much with all my heart that if anybody on this earth treated them the way that I've treated them in my drinking, I would take them out in my front yard and I'd beat them right out in my front yard. I look those very same people in the eye and I say, but I guarantee you one thing, it'll never happen again. And the crazy part about that is I believe that. You could hook a lie detector test up to me and I'll pass it. I get up the next morning, it's pretty chilly around my house still. I go down to work where I get to thinking about work on the way down there, about how people don't really respect me down there at work. They don't really give me my dues down there. I mean, I'm killing it, working 2-3 hours a day. I mean, I'm just crushing work. And I get down there and you know, I get in my car on the way home and I think about how they're not at home. They're all still mad at me from yesterday. And then the thought comes to me, and it's this, is I don't know why they're still mad. I apologized yesterday. And when that thought comes to me, it's maybe 24, 36, 72 hours after that thought comes to me. And I'm going to find myself back in a bar or at somebody's house or 3 drinks in, not even know how I started again. That's the piece of the puzzle. That's the piece of the puzzle from I swear to God, I'll never do it again to back drinking again. It's that peculiar mental twist. It's that time period between that swear to God, believe me, put a lie detector test on me, I'll never do it again, to the spot where I drink again. And it's the piece that drives the people that I live with crazy. It's the piece that drives the people that love me the most absolutely insane. I am baffled to explain to them. I mean, I give them all kind of good excuses and good reasons because my head has this wheel of fortune wheel and it just spins excuses. And if it lands on the right one, I'm drinking. But I can't really give them the kind of reason and rationale that based on always the circumstances of my life, the consequences that happen, I can't really articulate a good enough reason really in light of what always happens. And those 2 pieces of the puzzle, that ability that I can't drink because every time I start, I can't stop. And I can't not drink. Every time I tell everybody I love, I'm never doing this again, I always start again. And those pieces coupled with that spiritual malady is what fortunately qualifies me to be here with you people tonight. My drinking career looks like everybody else's. I mean, it just has this I'm cursed with potential, which means I've never done anything. But if I just had applied myself and hadn't scattered off in my drinking career, perhaps one day I would have. I mean, I'm just cursed with it, you know. I mean, I interview well. I look good on paper. I'm a good starter. I got no ability to finish. I'm a sprinter in a marathon. I mean, I've just got no ability to do anything. And the decline of my professional career looks just like what Bill Wilson described, that ski slope that he talked about in the book. And I'm a guy that builds up this bright future. When I'm 28 years old, I'm the first name partner in a 30-person firm here in Oklahoma City. I mean, I got this whole floor in this big, tall office building in downtown Oklahoma City, and I can't show up for work. I just can't show up for work. And, you know, some of you may have had some interaction with the legal community, probably not much, but you might have had a touch or two with it. And, you know, you might have been in court sometime. And if your lawyer doesn't show up, that's not a good day. I just need to share for those of you who've never had that experience. That's not a good day. And I'm one of those guys that couldn't show up. And judges would call my office and say, where is he? Where is it? People would throw pillows under me. They would lighten my fall and they would cover for me. And eventually what happened is that my drinking just overran my legal career and I just quit showing up at all. And that law firm exploded because when the rainmaker quits making it rain, the crops dry up and it just imploded. And I floundered around, kind of shifting from place to place. I'd met Lori before all that explosion happened, and I was between hostages at the time, and the horns in my head seemed to fit the holes in hers, and so we began to do the alcoholic dance. And I didn't know she was untreated Al-Anon. I didn't ask enough questions, I guess. And anyway, we began to do that, and you know, I took her hostage because you know how we are. We date with a toothbrush and a U-Haul. We don't mess around. And anyway, we coupled up, and she had this great job. She was selling radio advertisements when sports radio began to take off in the early 90s. And she sold radio advertisements. So I became what I like to call a functioning alcoholic. I had a wife that worked. And so I became that. Although you could say I was a real go-getter. I'd take her to work and go get her. That was my job. And so the last 3 years of my drinking, I just never drew a sober breath. I had an office. I'd been banished to the suburbs. So think of whatever the smallest closet is wherever you live. That's what my office looked like. I had this place I could go to, but I just never did. And the last 3 years of my drinking, I lived to drink. And eventually Lori had had enough of me. And, you know, some nights around this house, it looked like World Championship Wrestling. Although not fake. I didn't mean, if there's some of you who believe that, I'm sorry, I busted. Santa Claus is real. Okay, so I got that out of the way. I mean, it was tumultuous around here. And she eventually had all she could take. The summer of 2001, she threw me out, and I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't come to AA thinking I need to get sober. They sent me to treatment in the 80s. Not because I thought I had a drinking problem. Some other people did, and they sent me to treatment in the 80s. So I knew what AA was, and I'd gone to AA when I was 27 years old. And I heard people in there about my age now talking about, you know, stopping forever. And I was looking at those people thinking, well, that could be next week for you people, but I'm 27. I mean, my God. And so I went to AA not believing I had a problem. But my professional license had been threatened, and so I certainly wasn't going to give that up. So I went to treatment, and so I knew what AA was, and so I went there. And I want you to know, in the summer of 2001, when I went there, I didn't believe I had a drinking problem then either. The problem I had was I was thrown out of my house, and I needed to get back in. And so I developed, now listen up, sober houses, because these are important, because you need this. You need a newcomer plan, so the new people pay attention. I developed my very first newcomer plan, and the newcomer plan was this. I'm going to go to AA for 30 or 60 days, get everything calmed down at home, get back in the house, and then slowly go back to living my life the way I want to live it. Now, let me tell you about this plan, ladies and gentlemen. 202-444-304. Pay attention here. This plan is a lock. It is a guarantee 100% successful newcomer plan. so long as you're not alcoholic. Now, if you're alcoholic, it fails. But if you're not, this is a good plan. And that's what I did. I went to AA, and I went there, and all I could think about was how I was going to drink and stay sober. I'm going to beat the laws of physics. I'm going to figure it out, you know. And I sat in that room for 45 days. And on the 45th day, I'm at a noon meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you people circled up and said your prayer. And I walked out of there, and I walked right to a bar because I've discovered something about myself. Not then, but looking back today, that I'm not like my friends. You remember the ones I told you about, what I grew up with, that they got married, got jobs, and quit, and their life got better? I quit drinking, and my life didn't get better. As a matter of fact, it got worse. Something I didn't know, that I'm in the grips of a progressive illness, that over any considerable time, I get worse and not better. If I could just not drink and my life get better, you guys have a different speaker tonight. If I could just stop and suddenly it's all rainbows and lollipops. You, Joe, Ben, he and Carl, we'd never met. I would never know most of the people that I know on the street. Our paths would have probably never crossed because I could have just stopped. My life got better and I'd have just gone on. But when I stopped and just sat in AA, I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And at 45 days, I had all I could take, and I walked out of there directly to a bar and started drinking on a Thursday. And just like what always happens to me when I start drinking, I run away from home. And I ran away from home one more weekend, came home on Sunday, no communication with my family for 4 days. Of course, they were not happy to see me. I got displaced from my home one more night. I went and detoxed on a guy's couch for 2 or 3 days. And on August the 15th of 2001, I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous and I sat down. I didn't know it was going to be the day that I sat down in AA. I mean, really, if most of us were really honest, we'd have been just as well to take a dart and throw it at a calendar. I had no idea August 15th was going to be the day that changed everything for me. I didn't go back on that day to get sober. And if you're new or you're nearly new here, please hear this. I don't think you have to come to AA with the idea that I'm coming to get sober. I certainly didn't. I didn't come here with some kind of grand plan that I'm coming to AA to get sober, my life get better, and hopefully one day I can be on a Zoom meeting in Covina, California, and espouse the platitudes of how great my life has been. I mean, that wasn't my plan. I came back to AA, revised newcomer plan, 60 to 90 days. I got to get over that 45-day hump, but I'm just going to do that and ease my way back home. I didn't come here to get sober. And I'm sitting in that AA meeting on August the 15th, and all the same stuff still going on in my head. How do I drink? How do I stay sober? All that same stuff's going on. Nothing has changed. And there's about 5 minutes left in that AA meeting. Now, I don't know if you all can identify with this. Some of you can. You might remember back when you were new, or maybe it still happens to you from time to time today, that the head just talks to you all the time. People talk about the committee. If I could have got it to a committee, it would have been a boondoggle. I mean, it was like a full board fight, proxy fight. I mean, all the time up there, it was just going. And there's about 5 minutes left in that meeting, and it just goes quiet. And boy, that got my full attention. And a thought came to me, and the thought was this: if you don't do something different today, you're going to die. I'm going to tell you something. That's not a thought that originated in me. I didn't know that then, but I certainly know that today. How do I know that? The only thing I was thinking is, how do I drink and how do I stay sober? That's all I can think about. How do I beat the laws of physics? How do I get back in my house and drink and she don't know it? I mean, all that stuff. I'm just working on schemes and plans. And suddenly that all stopped. And the thought was, if you don't do something different today, you're going to die. You good people circled up to say your prayer, and as soon as it was over, I did what I'd done for those 45 days I'd been going before. I broke for the door. There were 2 doorways into that meeting place I was going to. What I didn't tell you about was, for those 45 days I'd been going there before, there'd been an old man there, Don. And old Don would catch me. I caught on to him after about 4 or 5 days. It takes me a while sometimes, a little slow on the uptake. He would catch me and he'd say, "Bub, how are you doing?" And I would give him the alcoholic answer: "Fine, fine." And he would just look at me and he'd say, well, listen, if there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know. And I would say, boy, if there ever is, and I'm gone. About 4 or 5 days, I catch on to Don's deal. So I used to put the head fake on him. I'd look like I'm going that way. And I'd go like, Carl's running back for the Seahawks, who's the Oklahoma State guy. I'd give him that head fake, and I would go the other way and he'd be there. I mean, he'd like beam down from the Enterprise. He'd just be there. And on August the 15th, 2001, I broke for the door and old Don caught me one more day. Let me tell you about Don. I bet some of you know him. You don't know Don, but you know him. Don's a guy that gets to the meeting 30 minutes early. You guys remember when we had AA meetings in person, but Don would get there 30 minutes early. Now think about this. Is there anything worse than being someplace you don't want to be than being there 30 minutes early? I mean, it's a mind game. But old Don would be there 30 minutes early, and he would set the tables up. He would get the literature out, make the coffee if nobody else was. If he had done all that, he would be outside in the anteroom at a table, and he would always have 2 or 3 acolytes out there, because all those people seemed to know how to do out there was read, write, or pray. That's all they knew. Read, write, pray. Read, write, pray. That's all they would do out there. And then if just before the meeting started, Don and the acolytes would float into the meeting. And then like all places, when you meet live, they ask, are there any announcements? And my God, I swear that Don would go on. He would talk about everything going on in AA worldwide, it seemed. It would go on sometimes 60, 90 seconds. I mean, forever. And I'm just listening to this. And if there was ever a newcomer at the meeting, my God, it was like a chickens on June bug. I mean, they just flogged that poor people. And, they were in there getting numbers, and the acolytes they're in there. And Don would stand back, and I would always notice this. Whenever the acolytes were done, Don would get in there and he'd give him his number, but he would do something different. He would always get the newcomer's number, because what Don knew that the acolytes didn't know was no newcomer can lift the 10,000-pound phone to call somebody. Don would call them. So I hope you have a Don in your life. I hope you have somebody like that in your life. Well, on August the 15th, Don caught me one more time, and he looked at me. He said, Bub, how are you doing? And on that day, I gave him a different answer. I looked at him and I said, man, Don, I'm not doing good at all. And he just looked at me and he said, I know. And he said, well, listen, if there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know. And I said, man, I need a sponsor. And no matter how I've described Don to you before, I swear, when I said that, it was like somebody plugged him into an electrical outlet, because he got excited. He got so excited at the thought that somebody needed a sponsor. I thought he was going to pee his pants. I mean, he just got way excited. And he said, let's sit down and talk about that. That's a lot to ask of somebody. And I didn't feel like saying I didn't really ask. I just made a statement. But he was on a roll, and I was just going to let him go. So I didn't have anywhere better to go. So I sat down. We talk around here about gift of desperation. The book talks about incomprehensible demoralization. It's just a moment of grace. Grace. That's all it is. And grace is given to all of us, not just in the rooms, everyone. But we have this thing, all of us have this thing called self-will. As a matter of fact, our textbook talks about self-will, that we have self-will that runs right. And I used to come to AA when I come to AA, and people would try to talk to me, but I would just reach the window and I would just begin to pull it shut on grace. And I just close it. And you've all have experienced that. New people coming to AA, they come in here and they're just, the toilet's burning up. It's up in flames. There's a dumpster fire where they live. I mean, it's just all bad, and I'll do anything. And then they get back in the house and they get the job back, or he comes home or she comes home, or they get back in the house or whatever. The job doesn't fire them. And suddenly they grab the window and they begin to pull the window down on grace. Don, that day, what happened was he sat me down. He began to share about what he was like, what had happened to him, and what he was like then as a result of taking the actions in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and what the steps, how they had transformed him and how he had lived his life differently. And I'm going to tell you, in that moment in time, it's amazing to me, and it won't be any big shock to you people here on this screen, how the right person seems to show up at exactly the right moment when grace is sitting there and available to me before I can get my hand on the windowsill to pull it shut. And old Don didn't talk to me from any kind of moral or spiritual high top. He didn't, he just laid out a kit of tools, spiritual tools at my feet and let me examine them. And I'm going to tell you something, Don, the greatest thing I think Don ever did for me was after every time he would catch me, he never tried to tell me that you need to do this, you need to get this book, you need to do this. What Don would do is he would offer me friendship and fellowship. And when I would reject that out of hand, he would step aside and allow whiskey to do the job. He would allow whiskey to convince me that Alcoholics Anonymous is where I needed to be. And on August the 15th, whiskey had done exactly what our textbook talks about. I had been beaten into a state of reasonableness where I was able to, for the very first time, I told you I'd been to treatment, I'd been to AA, I never could hear the music. But on that day, Don was able to talk to me in a way where I was open and receptive because I was out of plans and ideas. If I'd have had $5 in my pocket, if I'd had somewhere to sleep that night, if I had anywhere else to go, you'd have a different speaker here tonight. But on that day, I was out of plans and ideas. And Don got through the window of grace. And he dealt me a hand. I'm going to tell you something. I believe this to be a fact. I don't know if it's true or not, but I like the way I tell this part of the story. Don was a real believer in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he had read that part of We Agnostics that says, we got a couple of choices. We can have this view of the world and everything that is spinning nowhere, heading into nothingness, or we can have this position that we're God's intelligent agents, ever advancing his creation. And I like to think that every morning Don got up and looked in the mirror and said, "Good morning, God, it's Agent Don. I don't know what you got for me today, but I'm willing to go out and show up." And I'm going to tell you, every day Don would show up at Alcoholics Anonymous. He would look for knuckleheads just like me. Somebody who had been beaten into a state of reasonableness, who was willing to hear the answer. And I'm going to tell you, when Don got done with me that day, I don't know if it was 2 hours, 2 minutes, 2 days. I really don't know. But at the end of his presentation, I'm like some kind of big time poker player in Vegas. And I just push all my chips to the middle of the table and I went all in on Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been all in on Alcoholics Anonymous from that moment in time to this moment right here. 20 years later, I'm the best thing I can tell you about me and Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm a satisfied customer of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's not to say that ever since I've been here, it's been rainbows and lollipops, that there's just unicorns showing up every day at my house. And people come here, I'm sure, and tell you that how everything's just been skyrocket since they got in AA. And if they tell you that, they're charlatans. You need to run, because that doesn't reconcile with what my book says. My book says that we gotta grow our spiritual life. We got to perfect and enlarge it. I got to make it better and make it bigger for the certain trials and low spots ahead. And I've had them here. I've had trials and low spots right square, being sold on AA, having all my chips in the middle of the table, and have had those in AA. And if you're new or you're nearly new and you're riding the pink cloud, I just have one thing to say to you: buckle up. Buckle up. It's a ride and it's an adventure. It's an expedition. But to believe that you come here and you never have problems is a falsehood. Before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, it seemed to me that I had a seat at a Def Leppard concert. Now, the young people are not going to know who that is, but you other people will know. I'm on the front row of a Def Leppard concert right in front of the speakers. And that's what life looks like to me. And it blows on me. It blows on me. And it seems to me that life is happening to me. I got to tell you, I came to AA and I took the actions in the step. I did the inventory. I made amends. I've done several inventories and several rounds of amends because I can get some new old ideas and create some new trouble for myself right in the middle of AA. At 9 years sober, I got thrown out of my house because I was over sober. I don't know if any of you ever experienced that. I became the sheriff of Alcoholics Anonymous in Oklahoma. And I quit sharing my experience and started telling people how to do it. And I was a bad gossip. I'm a de-unifier. I mean, I broke every tradition. I'm horrible. And my wife says, hey, I'm going to have a sober home. And you may be physically sober, but you're not spiritually, mentally, and emotionally sober. 9 years. I mean, I'm making a name for myself in an anonymous program here. I mean, I'm somebody in AA, for God's sakes. I mean, and she threw me out of the house. And, you know, for about 90 days, I went and I did something I said to my sponsor that day, I hope nobody here ever has to say. And it was like when I said it, God took a hammer and just hit me on the head. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Or say something to your sponsor and go, God, maybe they just didn't hear it and I can go on to another subject, you know, or let me get that back. You know, I looked at my sponsor and said, man, I got to get back to basics. And the minute that crossed my lips, I'm like, oh God, I got to get that back, because it hit me that, my God, Cliff, that's all we have here is basics. All we have here is clean house, trust God, and help others. We don't have anything else. There's not some ascension that I move to and hope that you all one day can get there with me. I mean, there's not some level that I go to in AA that I look at you people, I can minister to you all I can, but maybe you won't get it. I don't know. That doesn't happen here. All we have here are the basics. All we have is the book. And all we have are the steps and the actions outlined in there for us to get closer to this power that we come to believe in here. And so, you know, as a product of the steps and the product of coming here and doing the things in Alcoholics Anonymous, what has happened for me is that I haven't changed seats at that concert. I haven't changed seats at life. I'm still on the front row at a Def Leppard concert, and it's still coming right at me. The difference is this. I don't believe today life is happening to me. I think it's just happening, and I'm in the stream of it. And in the stream of life, what happens is that I've been given a set of tools to deal with what comes at me today and some actions to take contrary to what my mind tells me, contrary to what I really believe. I've been given some actions to take that I don't have to live life doing it to me. I get to experience life being part of it today. Just being part of it and just moving through life with everybody else. And you know what it is that it's this really incredible journey. You know, if I was thinking the other day about, you ever have these epiphany moments? I mean, about a month ago, I just had this epiphany. It's something I've known, but I just have this epiphany because I'm watching somebody on TV taking a drink. It's like some movie I'm watching. These people are drinking and they're sippers. I'm not a sipper, by the way. They're sippers. And I just have this epiphany. I look at Lori, I go, I don't drink like that. And she looked at me like I had three heads. And she says, I know. I go, no, you don't understand. When I drink, if I got a vodka Collins, I drink it like water. I just start drinking it, just down the whole thing. I'm ready for another. And I've known that my whole sobriety, but it's like it comes into focus suddenly that, my God, I just drink. I just drink. And I'm going to tell you something for you folks that are new or you're nearly new. Something happened to me on August the 15th of 2001. Something happened. There's a shift. Our book talks about this rearrangement of ideas, attitudes, and emotions. That happened to me on August the 15th. On that day that Don talked to me, and he looked at me and he talked about step one with me. And he talked about step two being about hope. And he just looked at me and said, do you hope what's working for me can work for you? And something about in that moment that I knew that I didn't have to drink again. That obsession, that restless, irritable, discontented just vanished on me. That obsession to drink, that conversation of how do I drink and how do I stay sober disappeared on for me that day. to never return again. I know that's not everybody's experience, but my gosh, it was that. For me, that was the experience I had that day. And what I'm going to say to you, if you're new or you're nearly new, if you're here tonight, if you don't hear anything else I've said tonight, please hear this, that you're wanted, welcome, and needed here. That you're absolutely wanted, welcome, and needed in Alcoholics Anonymous. Joe Ben, thank you so much, brother, for having me. Carl, the gang, love all y'all. Thank you.